This is a video response to Math Fails integrating the shadow. And Math Fails, you did a great job with introducing the shadow according to Ken Wilber. And I watched your videos. They're all very good. And so if anybody's watching this video now and they don't know what the shadow is yet, then they need to watch Math Fails videos on the shadow because they're good. And I wanted to build on what you started, and I have Ken Wilber's book right here, Integral Spirituality, and in there he has a chapter on the shadow called The Shadow and the Disowned Self. The Shadow and the Disowned Self. And I was looking at your videos and I was looking at the responses as well, and one stuck out, and that one was by Macarena 9, and in her video she talked about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And that was perfect. That was a very sharp connection that she made, very sharp observation, because in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if anybody is not familiar with how the tradition goes in Tibet, well, a monk goes to the house of a dying person and sits by them on their deathbed and whispers the Book of the Dead into their ear, because as the person's dying, it's said that they're going through the Bardo of the dead, and these are altered states in which the person is probably going to experience or encounter what's called pleasant and wrathful deities. And the whole object is for the monk to get the person who's dying and passing through the Bardo of the dead to realize that all those projections are them. I mean, all the deities that they see, the situations, that's them. It's just their self. And so if the person realizes that, then they're enlightened. They're awake. They don't have to reincarnate again. What's likely to happen, of course, is they're gonna completely believe all the images around them in the states that they're going through as they're dying. They're going to get involved in the images, whether pleasant or bad, and they're going to reincarnate. They're going to be involved. They're going to get involved in the images that they see. So, what happens? Let's go back a little bit. What happens if the person, isn't able to realize that it's just them that they're seeing? Well, they pass into the Bardo of the living. They were in the Bardo of the dead. They couldn't enlighten themselves while they were there. So, as a consequence, they passed into the Bardo of the living, which is a little bit of a joke because we're in the Bardo of the living now. Really quick. You're passing through the Bardo of the dead, and what happens? You encounter one of the deities, whether pleasant or wrathful deities, and being unable to identify that as your own consciousness, you become attached, and you develop a relationship with it that's dishonest. Dishonest because it keeps you and the deity, or whatever image or whatever you encounter in the Bardo, keeps both of you separate. And that's not true, and that's what the monk is there to help the dying person realize. But they get attached. They begin to develop a relationship with the deity, the image, what have you. And basically the thing goes off on a tangent. And the tangent literally takes on a life of its own called the Bardo of the living. The problem is that once you're in the Bardo of the living, everything you do is based on a lie. It's based on that original lie of separation. So that's why this whole idea, this whole concept of a personal will is a false teaching. And think about it, a personal will, yeah, it seems like it works. That's relative. It seems like it works relative to the rest of the illusion that you're in. So when you say that you're going to use your personal will to reach enlightenment or to manifest anything, that personal will, so-called, that you have, that you imagine that you have, is like saying you're going to fight your way out of a pool of quicksand. It doesn't make sense. It reinforces the illusion. The right thing to do is not to take an action of more forceful involvement, but it's an action of detachment. That's another video, and I'm not going to get on the tangent myself. You see how easy it is to get on a tangent? Tangents can last for seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, lifetimes. But here's where Ken Wilber comes in with the 3-2-1 shadow yoga, as he calls it. He calls it shadow yoga. Basically, shadow yoga takes the right course of action, does what the monk says. And the monk says to cultivate an integration of the shadow now, while you're in a Bardo of the living. And the way that Ken suggested you do this is a very good way, because you start first with referring to the shadow, whatever that is, the bright shadow, which is a hero, or a dark shadow, which is something that you detest and you think has nothing to do with you. And you describe it in third person, and you maybe give a history of what, say if it's a dark shadow, maybe it's your boss that you don't like. You give a history of what your boss has done to you and everything in third person to begin with. You give a third person history of your boss and your relationship thus far. And then, as a second step, you address your boss as if he was there in second person. And then, in first person, you act as if you were the boss. So you just assume the form of the boss. And if you do this right, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. As a matter of fact, it's going to probably kill you mentally, which is the desired effect. And it breaks down that separation that you have. And yeah, you are that dark shadow. That's you. And you just, and Zen, they call it Dzogchen or something like that. I'm probably not saying it right, but Dzogchen. And it's a type of meditation which you just stay with the negative feeling, and you're going to get that when you assume the form of your boss or whoever in that case, and you just dwell into that until it collapses or implodes, explodes, or whatever, or basically just until you transcend and include that negative emotion.